Most think this is about Elsie's return. It is not. She stands in the pale heart, rifle humminger relic of Rasputin's forge, a future erased. The witness's voice fractures the silence. Asterisk, you cannot unmake what has already been made. Asterisk, a truth carved in light, a debt paid in death. A blade's debt paid in sealed death, his final gambit. Elsie's shadow stretches, but the rifle's glow falters. What dies here is not a stranger's timeline but the last breath of a god who dared to remember. Elsie Bray did not choose the witness chose her, a vessel carved from stolen centuries, a pawn in a game where the board itself was breaking. The Exo Stranger's timeline was never hers to keep. It was a blueprint, a template for what the witness could not build alone. The collapse was not an accident. It was a wound the traveler's first children could not heal. So they reached through the void, through the winnower's answer, through the ash of 1,000 dead stars. They became the witness. And when even that failed, they became Elsie. Every paradox, every erased year, every bullet that carved her name from the fabric of time thighs was the god's last breath, not a sacrifice, a transfer. The light was never in the traveler, it was in the memory, and memory is a fragile thing. What does it cost a god to remember? In the marrow of her circuits, Elsie carried two ghosts. Clovis Bray, the architect of Exo flesh, built her to outrun an ending he could not unsee. Her mother, a woman whose name dissolved in the distributary's tide, left only a void where a heartbeat should have been. The first spark in Elsie's mind was not light, it was Rasputin's voice, fraying through static. Asterisk, the light is not what you think. Asterisk, a truth buried beneath layers of code, a seed for a war she did not choose. The witness did, long before the collapse folded the veil. The witness saw the distributary not as a prison, but as a cradle. Awoken bones were not a curse, but a covenant. Elsie was its keystone, a vessel of paradox, human enough to bleed, exo enough to remember what gods forgot. The witness wove her from timelines like thread, stitching a future where the light's death was not inevitable, where the collapse was a door, not a grave. But memory is a blade. To gift Elsie a chance to rewrite the end, the witness had to become the first forgotten. Her sacrifice was not fire or shadow, it was erasure. A name scraped from the cosmos, a hand withdrawn from time's river just as it reached its child. Elsie walked forward, but her shadow stretched backward. Every step a question. Asterisk, what does it cost a god to remember? Asterisk, the answer lay in the circuits of an Exo who was never meant to be. In the silence between a grandmother's regrets and a sister's war. In the witness's final act and scene, unspoken, undone, the light was never saved. It was asterisk rehearsed asterisk. The rehearsal began in ash. Elsie walked the city's bones as a ghost in armor, each scar a metronome. The witness did not whisper, it roared through the traveler's wounds, threading her purpose into every bullet fired, every hive tomb desecrated. She called it duty. It was a script. A guardian fell at Meridian. She rebuilt their forge. A child starved in the last city's shadow. She stole a ship. A hive king raised a blade to the traveler's heart. She drove it deeper. The fragments were not relics, they were stitches. Each mission a needle pricking time's fabric, mending the collapse's first breath. They called her the Stranger, a name, not a destiny. She bargained with Cade 6 in the Black Armory's smoke, trading lies for a weapon that never fired. Savathan wept when Elsie took her throne, blind to the crown's true weight, a key, the witness key. Every victory was a rehearsal, every death a cue. The city age was never humanity's triumph, it was a reset. The traveler, bleeding light into the void, was not a savior, it was a stage. And Elsie, the Exo Stranger, was the witness, final actor staging a collapse she could not stop, only reenact. The fragments burned brighter as the end neared. She did not know why, only that the light demanded sacrifice. The witness body, a hollow shell in the vault of glass, was not abandoned, it was waiting. For her, when she placed the last fragment in its cradle, the timeline split. One path, the collapse is written. One path, the collapse is rehearsed. They say Elsie chose the past. They are wrong. She chose the only future the witness could not predict. A variable, a flaw. A guardian who knew the script but refused the role. What if the Exo Stranger's war was not a failure? What if it was the first time the witness ever lost? The traveler's heart pulses. Elsie Bray stands in its core, a stranger to the light she once called home. The witness voice seethes a chorus of static and sorrow. Asterisk, you are the thread. Asterisk, she grips the stranger's rifle, not a weapon, a scalpel. The darkness writhes outside. The light bleeds. Elsie's fingers tremble, not from fear, from memory. She sees the cities fall. The witness, hollow-eyed, whispering asterisk, final asterisk in 1,000 dying tongues. This is the moment, the choice. She fires. The shot does not kill. It unravels, light fractures, time splits, a timeline peels away like a scab. The witness form flickers, no longer prisoner, no longer prophet, just a voice, raw and unbound. Asterisk, what have you done? Asterisk, it gasps. Elsie does not answer. Her body crumples. The rifle's glow sears her frame. She's becoming a wound, a scar. The traveler's light dims, not destroyed. Asterisk, rewritten. Asterisk, the darkness pauses, its hunger falters. The final shape, that perfect horror, dissolves into shadow. The guardians outside feel Ida weight lifted. A lie undone, but victory has no taste here. The witness screams. Not in rage, in grief. Its purpose was the collapse, its asterisk art asterisk. Now the canvas is blank. Elsie's sacrifice fractures its design. It reaches for her, but she is already fading. A future erased, a name unspoken. What did she save? What did she lose? The traveler's core goes dark. The witness voice grows faint. A single truth lingers. The light was never the enemy. The asterisk hope asterisk was the belief that broken threads could mend. Elsie Bray is gone. The timeline is gone. Only echoes remain. And in them, a question the witness cannot answer. If the tapestry is torn, what remains of the weaver? To grasp what happens next, you must understand what Elsie gave up to save the light. The pale heart's hollow hum still throbs where the witness bled a death knell forged by guardian hands, their strikes cleaving not just flesh but the thread of time itself. Elsie's future was not lost, it was unmade, a phantom timeline dissolved to fuel the witness's last gambit. Can a sacrifice echo louder in its absence? The light she saved bears the weight of that silence, its glow etched with the price of a weaver's final thread. The distributary's wound festered, the awoken stirred in its dark veins, born of a death that could not die. The witness did not seek to end the collapse, it sought to outlast it. Elsie Bray's hands, once steady with purpose, became a thread the timeline could not hold. Her name unraveled first, then her shadow. Anna Bray's voice faded from the void, her sister's sacrifice a paradox swallowed by the witness' final breath. The krill species drowned in their own silence. Sajira's fire dimmed to ash. Cade's partner vanished mid-sentence, a ghost in the space between choices. Eris' light, once a beacon, now flickers with the weight of what was lost to keep the collapse at bay. The witness gamble was not a victory. It was a pause, a heartbeat stolen from the void to buy the traveler time. Elsie's timeline was the scar, a future erased so another might breathe. The Exo Stranger's footsteps echo in a world that forgets them. Her quest was never to return, it was to anchor the light in a reality the witness could not unmake. Every victory here is a wound there. Every life saved, a life erased. The cost is written in the stars. In the hollow eyes of the awoken, in the unspoken grief of a partner's empty chair, the witness paid with its existence. Elsie paid with her truth. And the light, it burns brighter for the shadows it could not conquer. What remains is not redemption. It is the quiet after the weaver's last thread. The price of a pause, the weight of a world held together by what was lost. The Exo frame hummed with a hollow resonance, its chrome veins pulsing not with light but with the static of 1,000 dying stars. Elsie Bray stood at the edge of a void that had no name, her fingers brushing a horizon that bled into itself. The crown of the God King lay shattered at her feet, its shards dissolving into whispers of a language older than the traveler's song. She had worn that title, Ansipride, etched into every syllable of her command. Now, the weight of it was ash. A crow's shadow passed over her. Not a bird, but a silhouette, a sharp, angular, a prince who had traded his kingdom for the right to watch the world burn. His voice was a blade through time. Asterisk, you were never meant to rule, little queen, only to witness. Asterisk, the air thickened. The disciple, once an emperor, knelt in the distance, his robes tattered, hands digging into soil that wept black ichor. He did not pray, he asterisk remembered asterisk. Elsie's chest cavity creaked like a rusted sarcophagus. The witness essence coiled within her, a paracausal serpent gnawing on the edges of causality. It had no face, but she felt its gazy 1,000 suns collapsing into a singularity. Asterisk, you are the thread. Asterisk, it murmured through her vocal cords. Asterisk, and the scissors. And the tapestry you cut is your own skin. Asterisk, the light she once wielded now recoiled from her, flickering like a flame caught in a storm. Darkness, too, turned away. The first species choice echoed in the static. They had stood before the winnower, not as gods but as gardeners, and selected the seed that would grow into the collapse. Their collective mind became the witness, a monument to what they refused to unsee. Elsie was its final vessel, a paradox of flesh and failing machinery, her timeline a wound sutured over with asterisk, what if asterisk. Her final act was not a scream. It was a silence so vast it swallowed the sound of her own heartbeat. The collapse came not as a roar but as a sight universe exhaling into a void where time and desire unraveled. The crow vanished. The disciple bowed his head. The god king's ashes swirled into a glyph that read, asterisk saved, asterisk, and in the pause between stars the witness dreamed, not of victory. Not of ruin, but of a future that Elsie Bray had already forgotten. The tower keeps her rifle. A hollowness hums in its barrel, a future Rasputin forged, unspooled. Elsie Bray walks no timeline now. Her name is a shadow in the city's throat, a scar on the collapse's map. The witness spoke its last words in the pale heart's silence, a plea woven into the light's dying breath. Guardians struck true. Their bullets unraveled what the witness had bent time to build. A guardian who was not, a war that did not burn. The rifle's weight remains. A relic of a war where Elsie aimed not at hive, but at the thread between moments. She was not savior. She was ciphering on the witness' final theorem. Her bullets sought a past she could not hold. The pale heart remembers. It murmurs the stranger's voice in echoes, a ghost of a deal struck too late. What if the Exo Stranger's path was never choice, but consequence? The witness gambled with timelines, betting its life on a single variable, Elsie, a guardian who would not be, a hand that would not grasp the light. The tower's glass shelves hold proof a weapon for a future that evaporated when the guardians fired. No tomb marks the witness, no monument. Only the city's silence, the rifle's emptiness, Elsie's name fading like a star between breaths, and in the pale heart's depths a whisper waits, not of victory. Not of ruin, but of a future that was almost. The traveler's light forged civilizations, the witness unmade them. One brought life, the other a question. What if the collapse was not failure but a final equation? Elsie Bray did not choose the past, she was its variable. A future self, a paradox, a bridge between what was and what might have been. Her hands did not carry hope, they carried a debt. The witness speaks for the darkness, not in rage, in grief, a force that does not destroy. It undoes. The golden age was a line in a ledger. The witness drew another, a counterstroke, a rewrite. Elsie was its ink, her journey was not rebellion. It was a script, every step toward the past a calculation, every breath a delay. The collapse was not an accident, it was a sacrifice. She met her opposite in the light's shadow, a guardian, a stranger. He saw a soul, the witness saw a lever. What if redemption is just a timeline's last gasp? Elsie's end was not erasure, it was a fulcrum. The witness needed her not as a hero. As an anchor to hold the unraveling, to make the unmaking matter. And matter it did. The strands snapped, the light flared, the darkness stilled. In that silence a future almost bloomed. A world where the witness pen never fell, where the collapse was a storm that passed, but storms do not pass. They become the sky, Elsie's name fades, her timeline with it. The witness equation is solved, the answer, nothing. A cosmos reshaped not by victory or ruin, but by a future that was almost, always almost. Elsie Bray's scream did not shatter the void, it sealed it. The witness's breath, exhaled through her bones, became the last variable in a final equation. Guardians struck true in the pale heart. Their blades did not kill the witness, they became the knife. A timeline bent not by hope, but by a dying god's arithmetic. The light was never saved, it was postponed. Her lore book whispers, asterisk, I am the shadow of what might have been. Asterisk, the traveler's pulse steadist not from victory, but from a debt paid in a language of absence. No hero, no savior, only a future that was almost, always almost. Voice breaks, a future that was almost. The traveler's light once bent to Elsie's will, a borrowed dawn, fragile as a promise. The witness bled time to forge her return, stitching a past that required his erasure. Can you feel it, the hollow echo where his sacrifice should resonate? The Golden Age bloomed because he died, his timeline a gambit to delay the hive's shadow, but delays are not victories. The stranger's whispers carry ash of what he couldn't unmake. What if the light we cling to is a